All right. Hello, everybody. Let me get situated here for a second. All right. Yes. It looks like we are live. Guys, I'm so excited to be here. This is one of my favorite topics. I love both of these roles so much, and I'm so enthusiastic or just excited to get the opportunity to talk to you about them, get you hyped up for both of these roles, talk about what the differences are, and sort of help you to flesh out a better understanding of what tech roles are all about. So my name is Adda Birnir. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder and CEO of Skillcrush, and I am coming to you live right now from my beautiful home in Queens, New York, where it is hitting 80 degrees today, which is, of course, delightful, but a little bit surprising. So it looks like you all can hear me. I would definitely love a confirmation in the chat. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation because I made a nice little presentation, and we'll go from there. All right, fantastic. Okay. Got confirmation that you can hear me, which is the most important thing. Okay. Good. I got a fancy new video camera, which you may notice. I'm shocked every time I go on video. I don't play guitar. I'm sorry, but I have an extraordinarily musical family. So we have 3 guitars actually in the corner there that they like to play. Okay, so welcome everybody. The topic of today's webinar is front-end developer or UI UX designer. Which path is right for you? And I should preface this all by saying, obviously, this assumes that you have already said that tech is right for you, which is fantastic and is a great choice in my opinion. And so now the question is really like, okay, you're interested in tech, you're excited about what tech has to offer. You're, maybe a little nervous, but still enthusiastic about, the potential of a career change into tech. And so now the question really is, okay, now that I'm going to, get off the pot I'm going to do the thing and commit to learning the skills, what job should I really dig in on? So you're here for a reason, and that is that you're looking for more fulfilling, higher paying, and more flexible work, all of which is available to you in the tech field. Throughout this webinar, I want to hear from you. It's going to be very participatory. I really hope that we get to have a really good discussion. I want you to ask lots and lots of questions because really I'm here to answer your questions and to help you figure this out. I definitely want to make sure that you walk away from this webinar with greater clarity about your path forward. Excuse me. With the 80-degree weather comes allergies. So to start off with, and I see a couple of people have already started to do this, I'd love to hear where you're calling in from. So where are you joining us from? Oh, I thought there was one other thing, but that's it. And also, I'd love to know, what brought you to this webinar. So have you been thinking about a career change for a long time? What are you currently doing? Yes, I see Tori is in the chat calling in from San Diego. Tori is a current Skillcrush student and our wonderful enrollment counselor, and she is so helpful and I think can be a great resource for y'all too. Ooh, we got Armenia, London, Sweden. Wow, this is amazing. Very international group of people. Lower East Side, love that. Tampa, San Francisco, Todos Santos, Mexico, phenomenal. Georgia, California, Santa Fe, beautiful. Okay, Tiffany says she's a career changer. Tiffany, I'm curious what you have been up to. Daniel says he doesn't hear anything. I'm sorry, Daniel. It seems like other people here, so maybe it's on your end. Try refreshing. Here from Michigan, we'll be relocating to North Carolina. I'm considering a career change from higher education student services work. Okay, great. Tuning in from Alberta. Holly says I'm here for the career change from public health. Okay, cool. Got more Georgians in the house. Hi from the Netherlands. Hello. Thanks for joining us. Oh, another one and someone in Hungary. Beautiful. Cool. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much for introducing yourselves and letting us know where you're from and what brought you. So what I'm going to cover in today's webinar is I'm going to talk about what front-end development and UI UX design are. We're going to talk a little bit about a day in the life of a developer and a designer. We're going to talk about essential hard skills and soft skills for each role. We're also going to talk about common developer and designer roles, what types of companies tend to hire them, and how much you can expect to earn. Cool. So a little bit about Skillcrush before we begin, and that is that we are, if you're not familiar with us, we are an online education company with a singular goal, and that is to help career changers land new jobs in tech. And in other words, what we like to say is our job is to get you a job. And the way that we do that is we go by a three-part process. Hold on. Click to close this. Okay. So the first thing that we do is we work with you to choose your career path, very much like what I'm doing right now, but literally once you enter the program, when you enter the Break Into Tech program, you will have access to both career paths, and you will always have, maintain access to both career paths. So one of the things that we do with you is that we work with you to figure out which one you want to prioritize. Then what we do is we help you learn all the skills to be qualified for the job. Job readiness is the whole idea here. So we, work really hard and think really deeply about the skills that you learn to make sure that you are really laser focused on the skills that you absolutely have to know in order to be qualified for an entry level position in front-end development or UI UX design. But at the same time, we want to balance that with understanding that you are an adult, you need to make money, and and time is of the essence. And so we also make sure that we are sort of really focused on what is important and get you to that finish line as quickly as possible. And then after you have completed the tech skill building portion of the program and built your portfolio, then we actually work with you to land your first job in tech. And so we have a 6-month live job search coaching program. So it involves a whole bunch of classes and, coaching sessions, both individualized and group sessions, to help you just like kick butt in that job search. Okay. So on that note, and the other thing that's really important for us at Skillcrush here is that we have this value, which is that tech is for everyone, and that includes you. And what we mean when we say that is that we work a lot with students who tend to come from groups of people who maybe haven't been as represented in the tech industry. So we especially, although we love to work with all students from all over the world, so we have students from all 50 states and 123 countries. We are particularly excited, or we want to make sure that we are particularly welcoming to people who have been underrepresented in tech. So that includes women, people of color, and mid to late career changers. So, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, we'd love to work with you. Okay, so the other last thing I just want to really make sure to clarify for everybody, because I think this is a really big difference between Skillcrush and other online coding boot camps and, places that you can go to, is when you enroll at Skillcrush, you actually get lifetime access to both career tracks, front-end developer and UI UX design. So although you do literally have to make a choice in terms of which one to focus on first, you do have the option always to switch between the tracks if you realize that you're in the wrong one, or if you just want to add another skill set to your existing skills, then you're always welcome to do a second track. So I know that this is, and part of the reason we do this is because we know this is a really hard choice. It's really hard when you don't have any experience with these skills. You haven't done it. How are you supposed to know? Some people have a really strong conviction and feeling that they are attracted to one role versus the other, but other people don't. And we just want to make sure that you guys have the most, the greatest range of options. Okay, so, I don't know what just happened to my presentation, but what I'd love to hear from you, because you already did answer my first question here, which is that a lot of you shared what brought you here today and where you are in the process of the career change. What I would love to know now is when you think about this, choosing a path between developer or designer, I'm curious what your biggest obstacles are. So Jimmy says learning it. Yeah. Finding time. Too interested in both. Well, Emmy, you can always do both. Naomi says, which will I enjoy the most? Not sure if I should switch from designer to developer. Is the learning curve too high? What will be the most meaningful and fun? Yes. I mean, something that I just appreciate so much about our students is that, the number one thing we hear from students is that they're looking for, higher pay, more growth opportunities, but really they just want work that is meaningful to them and that they enjoy. And I so support that. Darian says, mine is really wondering whether I can do it and if I'd enjoy them. Yes. And Darian, I would suggest that, the answer to your question will be really in the reverse, meaning what you enjoy, you can do. And, I think for all of us, like long-term, you really can't do something and you won't be good at something that you don't enjoy because you're not going to, sort of have the passion for it. I'm finding a platform where a new person can find a job. Patricia says, I'm getting back into design after years away. I'm not sure which path is best. I have skills that apply to either one. Holly says, work-life balance, fear of high learning curve from different career field, higher pay without going to school. Yeah. This is so helpful to me for understanding the context that you all are in. And also, I just appreciate you all sharing this with me. Okay, well, let me dive in and hopefully we can start to address some of these, questions that you have and challenges that you have. Yes, landing consistent work. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so fundamentally, in broad strokes, what a front-end developer does is they bring website designs to life using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. There's a lot more skills that, front-end developers should have to, especially professional front-end developers. And I'm going to talk about them more. And then also, I just finished writing this really long guide all about this topic. So I will give you guys a link to that and you can really dive into it. But I think the thing that is really important to remember is that ultimately, the sort of core skill set that front-end developers have to have is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And those are the only coding languages that front-end developers use. Of course, that said, something that we'll talk about more when we get into the nitty-gritty of the skills is that a lot of the skills that you end up using as a front-end developer are really about optimizing how you use HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what do you do with them? How do you write the best code? How do you write code that'll run the fastest? And how do you make sure to implement things that are, in a way that is accessible, that is scalable, et cetera, et cetera. So the reasons why we are so hot on front-end developers and why we, train our students to be front-end developers and why, in addition to the fact that it's just a really freaking awesome job that's really fun and I think it's phenomenal. So there's that. But also what's great about front-end development is that there's low barriers to entry. Degrees are absolutely not required. And as evidenced by all of our students who've ever gotten jobs, you also don't have to have prior experience in the field in order to get your first entry-level job. There are awesome job prospects. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that web development jobs will grow by 25% by 2031, which is significantly higher than the average for jobs in the United States. The pay is high. So the median salary in the US is, I think, between $50,000 and $60,000. And according to the website Indeed, 100 front-end developers on average make $100,000 or more. I can tell you that for most of our students, what we see is that there is a range that can range, we've had students get jobs for as high as $150,000 as their first job. So quite a lot. But the average is about $70,000 as a first job right out of the gate. And then it sort of scales up quickly from there. So I would say that most of our students within 2 to 3 years have hit that $100,000 mark. But just to, make sure that you have a realistic set of expectations of the timeline in terms of when you're going to reach that. And then, the reality is that there's almost 2 billion websites in the world and they all need a front-end developer. And okay, sure, lots of websites are built by, sites like Wix or WordPress or what's the other one that's so big that is Squarespace. But, those companies, well, first of all, I can tell you that we actually have had a lot of students that have made good freelance money building Squarespace websites and customizing them using code. But also Squarespace, the company, employs a whole ton of front-end developers. So they really do all need front-end developers. And then in general, it's just a great launch pad for a variety of tech careers. So front-end development, you can just take it in so many different directions, whether it's product management, different types. You can, parlay it into, full stack development, more advanced types of front end development, et cetera. Yes, exactly. Cool. Okay, so now let's switch to UI UX designers. So UI and UX designers use data and creativity to create designs that solve user problems. So fundamentally, the idea here is that UI and UX designers, they have all the skill sets of a web designer, meaning they know, typesetting and layout and colors and all of that. But then really what sort of distinguishes them from your run-of-the-mill web designer or sort of their foremothers and forefathers in web design is that they are really dug into user experience and user problems. So thinking about the user first, like user-centered design, meaning that they really start from the place of, okay, what is it that the customer needs? What are they looking to achieve? What are they looking to do? And how do I create a design that's both visually pleasing and usable, meaning it'll help the person achieve the thing that they're looking to achieve. And part of the reason why this is a role that has sort of been in formation and development for many years, but it's kind of really bubbled up to the surface. And the reason for that, it goes completely hand in hand with the development of front-end development technology. So since 2010, there's been this thing called the JavaScript framework. And I apologize, because I wrote this article, I'm so deep into the history of all this stuff. I will share that article. I won't share it right now because then you guys will all go read my article instead of listening to me. But basically, what happened in 2010 is that people started using these things called JavaScript frameworks. So they became very popular. And since that time, so over the last 10 years, it has really changed what we're able to do in websites and on the front end. So all of a sudden, all the things that you guys know and love, these super, interactive websites that we all use and love. For example, Crowdcast in this moment, the fact that we can chat in real time. All of this has really complicated the design challenge of the web, right? So it used to be that a website just had a headline. I mean, it was a blog or something like that. But now there's all these really complex things that we can do on the web. And that has made the job and the role of the UI and UX designer so much meatier and more complex, which is also why it's such an exciting area to be in, I think. So again, similar to front-end development, there's a relatively low barrier to entry. Degrees are not required. In large part, I would actually argue here, there really aren't too many degrees in specifically front-end development. I think, the degree that you would get would be like a computer science degree, but especially when it comes to UI, UX design, higher education really is behind in terms of the development of all of these technologies. And so there really aren't degrees to be had in this field. It utilizes a lot of transferable skills. So, I think this can be a great role for anyone who has a lot of customer service experience, anyone who's worked in sort of administration, teaching. And that's not to say that if you haven't worked in those things, you can't do this role. You absolutely can. But there's just a lot of opportunity to use transferable skills in this role. It has awesome job prospects. It too is expected to grow 23% versus 23.5% by 2031. The pay is really good, $90,000 and above, according to Indeed. And, like I said before, 1.7 billion websites, and they all need user-friendly designs. So, and similar to front-end development, it's a great launch pad for a variety of tech careers. So whether that would be, going deeper into user experience and getting really specialized in user experience, going deeper into UI, and getting really specialized there, going into something like product management. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting opportunities for UI UX designers. Cool. So let me just pause really quickly and ask if anyone has any questions that I can answer right off the bat about what I just talked about, and then I can talk more about the day in the life of a front-end developer or UI UX designer. Does what I'm explaining about UI UX design and how it has, as a field sort of come up with the whole development of front-end development technology make sense to everybody? If you think about the websites that you've used, like I was trying to think about all the websites that I would give as examples. It's like if any of you have used Figma, Figma. So Adobe just bought Figma, which is a big deal because Adobe has been known for all of its computer software, and now they're sort of putting all their hopes on this web-based software. So that distinction of being like computer software versus web-based software is really, really, it's a big deal in the development of all of these technologies. Darian says it makes sense. Fantastic. All right. Well, I'll keep going. Okay. So let's talk about a day in the life. So I'm going to give you like a little bit of a preview of coming attractions. In some ways, okay. I'm going to answer a really good question that Bella just asked. But in some ways, what you're going to hear from me is that the day in the life of a front-end developer versus UI UX designer on the surface isn't necessarily that different. Okay, so Bella's asking, having WordPress and website constructors are front-end developers really needed? And yeah, the answer is absolutely. First of all, one thing you have to think about if you're talking about like website constructors like Squarespace or Wix, it's funny. I was trying to use this analogy for somebody, which is this still might be too inside baseball for it to work as an analogy, but I used to work in the photo world. And in the photo world, there was sort of this idea, you have the consumer camera, you have what's called so that would be like, nowadays it would be like your iPhone, but back then it would be like, sort of point and shoot. And then you have what they call a prosumer camera. So that would be like a really nice Canon camera, right? That like zooms and like does all kinds of fancy things, but still is something that you like, that you're, like for example, my dad's really into photography. So like it's a camera that he owns. And then you have what's called the professional level camera. And those are, like the red camera, like, or these Canon, like very fancy cameras. I don't even remember, like the EO5 or something like that. And you have to understand that it's the same thing here, right? So you have the consumer level website builder, which is maybe the Wix. Then you have the Squarespace, which is, or like, maybe some of these e-commerce platforms that are sort of allow kind of these like small businesses that have limited, functionality that they need to do on the web. They make that available to them. And again, like I said, we have a lot of students who actually get freelance work building on Squarespace and is it Shopify? I'm thinking about the really big e-commerce company. Anyways, so those even need, to be more complex. Like, yeah, there's definitely a version of those sites that people can set up on their own without coding, but usually actually they do end up hiring experts to do it. But those are still in the prosumer level. And then there's the category above that, which is websites that are built for companies where not only are they websites that like, that like advertise the company and what they do, but like something like Facebook or Figma or Slack or Crowdcast. Like these are the websites where like the website is not just to advertise the company's services or to sell the product, but it actually is the product, right? Like it is the thing that you pay for. You pay for access to the website. You use the website. It has incredibly rich functionality. And that's what front-end developers do. Mohammed is asking this question. Adobe is cloud-based themselves now, right? So I would say that, yes, I think they literally call themselves cloud-based, in that, like, it used to be that you like bought a DVD of Adobe, like Adobe Photoshop, and you like put it in your computer, and that was like how you updated. Now you update basically in real time, but it's still software that you download onto your computer, and you don't use it in your browser. So it's not browser based, which is what Figma is. So Bella, so how many businesses are ready to pay more to have more sophisticated websites? I mean, enough to employ hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of developers. I'm not sure like how. I'm not sure exactly what information I can give you in this moment that would sort of prove this to you, but I mean, I can tell you, like, there's literally hundreds of thousands of front-end developer jobs in the United States. So there is a great demand. And according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's going to grow by 25% in the next, 8 years. So there are a lot of businesses. I mean, there's a lot of businesses in general. And then the really, really big businesses employ a lot of people. Okay, I'm going to get back to the day in the life. So a day in the life of front-end developer. So this is sort of a good example of what a day in the life can look like. So they might begin the day by checking in with their team and reviewing the day's agenda. I will say, I don't mention this in the slide, but a lot of development teams will use a methodology called Agile. And so what Agile, in broad strokes, Agile is sort of a way of working together on a development team that includes some sort, I call them, I think it's kind of a religion. It's like a religion without like a deity. And it has some sort of, rituals that you participate in. And one of them is a daily check-in. You will collaborate with other team members on assigned tasks. So that might look like implementing and testing new designs and features. So basically, like, you'll get a new design from the designer that you're working with. You'll code that up. You'll test to make sure that it works. You'll probably, no doubt, find some bugs. And then you will improve existing code. So that might look like, I had this idea over, like sometimes like you'll be like in the shower and you'll have this idea for, Tia, I appreciate that you appreciate my religious preference for Agile. You might have this idea, I wrote this line of code or this code function and it took 10 lines, but I thought of a way to do it simpler. So you will make that fix. You might update a little bit of documentation. Documentation is a really, really important part of any developer's job, especially on a development team, because, especially when you're working on really large web applications, it's impossible for any one person or even or even just one team to know all, like, what's all in the code base. And so you write documentation as sort of like a map to finding stuff. And then you might continue some ongoing learning. So a reality of working in tech, and, this is part of the reason why I say, like, you want to have one of the most important, not really skills, but sort of characteristics of somebody who will be a good fit for tech is somebody who's really enthusiastic and passionate about it, right? Who enjoys learning new stuff. Because the thing is, the reality is that, tech is always evolving and there's always new stuff that's being discovered and developed and created. And so, this is why this is the fun of it. So a part of every technologist's job is going to be continuing to learn in little bits and in bigger bits by attending webinars, participating in online discussion within the development community, reading a newsletter, that kind of thing. And then usually you'll wrap up your day by just updating, what you did, sort of notes and stuff like that in Jira. It doesn't have to be Jira. Jira is a project management software that is very commonly used by developers. It's developed by a software company called Atlassian, which is Australian and a very, very large company. They actually own Slack too. Actually, no. Am I crazy? Maybe they sold HipChat to Slack, or someone will have to fact check me on this. And then you're going to commit and push any work in progress to the Git repository. So for those of you who have, tried out Skillcrush courses, you will know what Git is. Git is a version control system. So you'll update the cloud or whatever repository you're using, and then answer any outstanding Slack messages. Emmy's asking, how much do you really code new code as a front-end developer, seeing that it seems not that much. Yeah, I think that it totally just depends on the company and the role and the project. But I do think like you're going to be coding, whether or not you're coding, I guess, to maybe interpret your question a slightly different way. You probably are not going to be coding a lot of stuff from scratch. Meaning like you probably won't have a lot of like, oh, I started a project from nothing. And your role as a front-end developer more often could be to just continue to sort of improve upon existing code. All right. Now, let's talk about a day in the life of the UI UX designer. So again, if a UI UX designer is on a software development team, they too will probably be using Agile. So at the beginning of the day, they'll check in with the team, review the day's agenda, see what meetings they have, etc. They will also collaborate with other team members on assigned tasks. And I think, let me just take a pause here and make a note here that this is also one of the beauties of the tech industry that I think isn't always obvious to people from the outside. Like, I think there's definitely kind of this stereotype that, tech is about like working by yourself, not talking to anybody. And especially with UI UX designers, I couldn't be further from the truth. So UI UX designers, although of course, like, an important part of any designer's work is going to be sort of getting into that flow state and getting into the design. But just as important is going to be, conducting user interviews, talking to stakeholders, getting feedback from their team, working with the developers to make sure that what they're designing is going to be, something that the developers can realistically implement, et cetera. And there's like sunshine coming in, and I apologize. It's like, So they too are also going to be continuing ongoing learning. So reading new blog posts, attending webinars, all the same stuff, and then wrapping up the day with the same sorts of things. So updating tasks in Jira, setting priorities for the following day, and answering any outstanding Slack messages. Darian is saying another concern or fear is wondering whether or not a newcomer can handle the workload or whether it's an intense work environment at all times. I imagine this is subjective and company specific, but something that comes to my mind. Yeah. And Darian, I just want to say, like, that's a really understandable concern or fear. And I do think it's going to depend on a number of factors, including, the company that you work for, the size of the team that you're on, and those types, and sort of, like just the general environment. Like, I think the larger the team, in some instances, kind of the less immediate pressure is going to be on you as an individual, especially if you are in a position where you can, get mentorship from other developers. The downside of that approach or that type of environment is that sometimes it can feel like you don't get to do a lot, right? So on the flip side, we've definitely we've had students end up in both situations, like situations where they are, one, like the only developer on the team or one of only a couple of developers. And then the beauty of that is that they're getting so much experience. And yes, I think then they probably have a little bit more overwhelm. But it, and I think I think that first of all, the things I would say to you are, one, this is something that you can totally suss out. Two, I think the more familiarity you get with the technology, the more projects that you build as part of your learning process, the less this will be scary, I think. And then the other thing is a really important part of any developer's role. I think in design, this operates a little bit differently, because in design, design is like the blueprint, right? And developer, to have a really sort of limited analogy, if you think about a house or a building, designers are the architects and developers are the construction crew. And so the thing is that the stakes for designers, although it's really important that they get it right and, that they design a building that works, because that building's going to be there a long time and it needs to be awesome. They're not literally in the position of oh gosh, if I don't hammer this correctly, the roof could cave in and fall in on someone's head, right? So those stakes are just a little bit different. So I think that can always make development jobs a little more intense because you're actually like, as they say, like they call it pushing to production. And that means that you actually launch something live on the web and like, oh no, what if everything breaks? But the thing is that any professional web development environment, and these are also skills that we're going to teach you at Skillcrush. So the thing is, like, you can also implement this, is we'll have a lot of safeguards. So it'll have version control, it'll have a development and a staging and a production environment, and it'll have a really thorough QA process. So basically what you do as a developer is you create a situation where you really limit the sphere in which you can screw things up, basically. And so even if you screw things up royally, it'll be fine because you can just hit reset and fix it. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, cool. So let's talk about the skills you need. I think I've been, sort of giving you a preview of coming attractions here, but we can get into it a little deeper. So what are the hard skills that front-end developers need? They need to know HTML and CSS. Those are, for those of you who don't know, HTML and the web are like one and the same. The guy who created the web I think now he's been knighted. So he is Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He is a British computer scientist who was working at a research institute in Switzerland when he came up with this idea, which was that he would basically create this thing called a web browser, and it would read documents coded in HTML, hypertext markup language. And then he had this whole idea for like linking. So basically, his little document of HTML would have a link to another document of HTML. And this was the birth of the modern internet, or the modern web. And the technology that he used to do that was HTML. So you have to know HTML. CSS basically was created to solve a problem that was happening in HTML, which is, first of all, HTML was really, really boring looking. I actually literally had the world's first website up, and now I'm going to find it for you because this is the kind of web history that I love, and therefore you are going to be subjected to it. And of course, now I'm beach balling. So I will show it to you as soon as my computer decides to agree to participate in my endeavor. And so here we go. All right, sounds like my son is up, so my husband will be grabbing him, but just know that if you hear those sounds in the background. So this is the first ever website. You can visit it. It's not secure, so, visit it at your own risk. I'll put the link in the chat. So you have to know HTML. So the problem with HTML, as you can see, I believe, is like it is quite boring to look at. I mean, it gets the job done, but it's not interesting. And so what people started to do was that they started to write all these styles into the HTML. So they started to write into the HTML, like, I want this title and I want it to be blue instead of black, and I want the background to be green. And it was basically, they were writing it all in their HTML. And although you can do that and it works, it gets really janky really, really quickly. I mean, it doesn't scale. So then they came up with, in the 90s, so this was like, what year was this first website? I want to say like 1989 or something like that. So by 1996, people were like, we can't have this anymore. We need a better way to make HTML look good. And they started developing CSS. And then I would say around 2000 is when CSS really became available on the web. So what CSS allows you to do is it allows you to disaggregate your HTML, like the content of your site, from the way it looks. So you write all the directions about what it looks like in a different document. It's called, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And you can actually use a whole bunch of different CSS documents as you want. And so that sort of gave rise to the ability to make websites really look great. And then, CSS has gotten more and more robust as modern web developers have developed and all of that stuff. And then back in 2012, I want to say, there was this guy named Ethan Marcotte, and he was a developer / designer. He did a little bit of both. And his whole thing was that he was getting really tired of having to create one website for desktop and one for mobile. And he was like, this is very difficult to maintain. And, this is kind of like themes in technology and development is like maintenance. Can you maintain it? What happens? Like, is it scale? Like when this website goes from like 1 page to 100,000 pages, what happens to your code base? And so he sort of figured out this very cool way to use CSS to have the same code base work on desktop, tablet, mobile, any type of screen. And so that is responsive coding, or responsive web design, as it's sometimes called. And that's another front-end developer skill that you need to know. And then we have JavaScript. So JavaScript was created, I believe, by the, I was about to say Netflix, but Netscape browser. And JavaScript is the only programming language that front-end developers use. It's the only programming language that works on the client side, meaning in the browser, as opposed to the server side. And sort of the history of the development of the web is really tied to, like, what we've been able to do is directly proportional to what people have figured out how to get JavaScript to do. And so JavaScript is, like, hands down the most popular, the most widely used programming language in the world. It is a required skill for all front-end developers. It is not the friendliest programming language to learn, unfortunately. It has many, many virtues, but friendliness of learning, it is not. But it is a totally learnable skill, and it's awesome and incredibly powerful. And for the last 10 years or so, people have been using these things called JavaScript frameworks. And what JavaScript frameworks do is they make it possible for you to, much more quickly than having to build everything from scratch, build these incredibly robust web applications. And there are a number of different JavaScript frameworks. Basically, sort of like Facebook came out with one, Google came out with one, some independent developers came out with one. And it was kind of an arms race for which one would be the most popular. And honestly, there's a couple of really, really strong ones. React.js, which is what we teach, and I'll tell you why in a second. Angular, Vue, I'm sure I'm forgetting some other very popular ones. But anyways, those have really, made possible the creation of all these super, super, rich interactive experiences that we all know and love on the web. So React.js is a JavaScript framework. It's a JavaScript framework we teach. And the reason why we teach it is because, as opposed to some of the other popular ones, it's a little bit simpler and the learning curve is not as steep, but it's still really, really powerful. And the good news is that once you learn your first JavaScript framework, the rest of them come much more easily. So we find that just, in terms of bang for your buck, it's also the most popular one in terms of what we see in job listings. So it's sort of, it's like, yes, Next.js is definitely, it's hard to keep up with all the different JavaScript stuff. And then the last thing is Git. So Git is a version control software. You guys may have heard of GitHub. GitHub is a website that hosts Git repositories on the cloud. You can also host them on your local computer. It doesn't have to be on the cloud. It's just like a good backup. And Git allows you, to put it extremely simply, Git allows you to do basically track changes for your code. And what is really, really important about Git and why it's a required skills for front-end developers is that it's what allows, like an unlimited number of developers to work on the same code base without overwriting each other's into each other's code. Mohammed asking the hard questions. Is React a framework or a library? As last I knew, it was considered a framework, but I will say this is a hotly debated thing that a lot of people like to discuss, and I don't feel like I'm like the best authority on like what is a framework and what is a library. Okay, so let's talk about some soft skills that front-end developers have, which I'm sure that you all have already, which is they have to have good communication and collaboration skills, great problem-solving skills, the whole beauty. And this is why these types of roles are so creatively fulfilling, is that there is never one, first of all, there's never one way to do something. And there's not even necessarily, one best way to do something. If there's just, lots of bad ways to do something, lots of, medium ways to do something, and lots of great ways to do something. And sort of, the challenge for you as a web developer or as a front-end developer is to figure out, is to increasingly, have go from, mediocre ways of doing things to increasingly better ways of doing things. And then also balance that against the amount of time that it takes to implement a really, really elegant approach versus, sort of it'll get the job done. So time management is, of course, part of this. Adaptability, because the only constant in life is change. But, never is that more true than in the world of technology. And then, of course, just passion for the web, right? Like your excitement about technology and the web is going to take you so far. Because the thing is, like, you're always going to have to be learning new things. So okay, so let's talk about hard skills for UI UX designers. They need to know user research and testing. In many ways, okay, Laura is telling me that React is a library and Angular is a framework. Intrigue. We'll have to settle this debate. So user research and testing, data analysis skills. Data analysis, if on the off chance that sounds a little intimidating to you, I want to encourage you to remember that data is not just numbers, right? And quantitative. A lot of data that user researchers need to use is actually qualitative data. Wireframing and prototyping, visual design principles and tools, and web accessibility best practices. So something interesting that I was just reading about myself was that according to, it's like Section 508 of the US Act, like Disabilities Act, says that all websites need to adhere to web accessibility standpoint practices under US law, which is awesome and appropriate because it's, like accessibility to the internet is now increasingly, a lot of people are arguing should be a human right. And that should extend to humans that, have different forms of disabilities, whether it's visual, hearing, mobility, etc. But what is really unfortunate is that they estimate about 2% of websites in the world actually adhere to those standards. So this is something from a legal standpoint you need to know, but B is something, from a moral and ethical standpoint is something that all UI UX designers and frankly, front-end developers too should be familiar with. In terms of soft skills, a lot of the same ones you see with front-end developers. You got communication and collaboration. Empathy is really, really important for UI UX designers. I trust that you all have empathy and know how to empathize with other people. And I think, for you to think about in making this choice is sort of understanding other people, really getting deep into their experiences. That's something that you really enjoy to do. Then that is something that would make you extremely well suited for UI UX design. Great problem solving. Here your tools are going to be different than a front-end developer, but fundamentally your job is going to be similar, which is you have to solve problems with the tools that you have. Time management, adaptability, and passion for the web. Edward is saying, I've come across quite a few jobs posts for UI UX designers that ask for HTML, CSS, JavaScript knowledge. Would it make a UX designer less competitive if they didn't have those skills? That's an interesting question. I guess, I think it's going to, for those roles, yes, it would. For roles that don't require that, no, it wouldn't, right? But of course, I do agree. I don't necessarily agree that those are required skills for the majority of UI UX design roles. However, the thing you have to remember, and this is why we teach these two skills and why we offer students access to both, is that fundamentally these are totally complementary roles, right? And complementary skills. In both instances, what we're dealing with is what websites look like, what you can do on them, and what technology it is that makes all of that possible. And those are totally interrelated, complementary roles, skills, technologies, etc. So now let's talk about types of roles and types of companies that hire for front-end developers and UI UX designers. So this is just a little, what I wanted to do here was actually give you real roles at real companies that our students have gotten jobs at. And this is just a small subset, but so we've had students get junior software developer roles at a civil engineering consulting company. One thing I love so much about Naomi is saying she definitely wants to do design. I love that, Naomi. See, amazing. I'm so glad that you had that aha moment. And if you didn't, if you're still not clear, anyone out there, don't worry. You've got plenty of time to figure it out, or you've got plenty of opportunities. So one of the things I love about our students and the jobs that they get is that I learn so much about what the opportunities are in the process. So we had someone get a junior software developer role at a civil engineering consulting company. Didn't know that was the thing, or that there was roles in that, but there you have it. Front-end developer at a federal government agency. These are roles I love. I'm a big civic tech geek. So it's all about technology for the government and government services and stuff like that. We had a developer at a web development shop. So a web development shop is just, an agency or a company that makes websites for other companies. A developer at a major public university. We actually have had a fair amount of people who got roles in education. Friend web developer for a state court system. Who knew that they needed it? Now you do. And then a support engineer at an ad tech company. The other thing I will say is that we do train people for front-end developer roles, but titles in tech are like a whole thing that is very confusing. And so what you have to do when you're applying for jobs is look at the skills, Edward, to your point, that are being advertised for and see if it's a good fit, because titles really are all over the map. And this is something we go over in great detail in our Get Hired program. So some roles that our UI UX designer students have gotten: visual designer in ed tech company serving K-12 schools, UI UX designer at a solar panel company. How cool is that? A UX designer at a major public university, not the same one. Although I do think they were both in California. So maybe California universities are really bleeding edge here. Designer at a marketing agency. Marketing agencies are an awesome place to start. That's where I started as a developer. They're so great because you do a whole bunch of different types of projects, and that can be so useful when you're just getting started in the field. Ultimately, for me, I ended up really wanting to work product side, meaning to work at one company and develop a product for a longer period of time. But I think the experience I had building like website after website after website after website was invaluable and has served me so much. So I'm really grateful for that experience, and I would recommend it for anyone. UX designer for a SaaS company. So that is a software as service company. So anything like, there's so many different SaaS companies, like email marketing software, or Salesforce is a big software service, Jira. So that's the project management service I was talking about. There's so many of them. Digital project associate for healthcare tech company. So lots and lots of opportunities. Cool. So I have some questions I queued up, but let me actually just look at the questions you guys have submitted here because they're awesome. Okay. Joy is asking, under which pathway is a QA engineer classified? So that's a good question. I would actually say that the answer is really neither. I mean, it's more related to front-end developer than UI UX engineer or developer. But QA engineer is really a field onto itself. It's its own established discipline with its own established, technical skills that you need and all of that stuff. So yes, the answer to that question would be neither. Do you see this opportunity, tech work, remote work, changing anytime soon? How long? So Jimmy, I don't totally know what you mean by changing. I guess, let me put it this way. Will it change? Yes, constantly. But I do not think that tech work is going anywhere. I think that you can just see the development of technology and the way that it is changing every aspect of our lives to answer the question of whether these roles are going anywhere. They are not going anywhere. I know, there's a lot of fear around the layoffs that have been happening in big tech. Despite the layoffs in big tech, unemployment in the tech sector is still really, really low. And, and also I've been working in tech for now almost 15 years, and it goes through cycles, right? And there's little dips, and then it comes roaring back. And then I will just say to you, there couldn't be honestly, starting a program like this in a dip is a great time to do it, because that means that you will be so well positioned to get a job when things come back, which they inevitably will in the next 6 to 12 months. And, as opposed to people who started the program when things were roaring, and then are now finishing, they maybe are struggling a little bit more. So, Do I think that UX, UI design workers will generally stay remote? I think tech workers are staying remote. I think this is like, the cat is out of the bag, or I don't know what they say exactly, like what the right analogy is, but it's like, you're not stuffing this back in. Now that everybody knows that you can do these roles remote, it's not going backwards. So if you are looking for remote work, you will have no problem. I mean, you like, if you're not looking for remote work, you may have a problem getting in-person work. That's just the reality of the job market today. It's been astounding to see that happen and how quickly it happened. Okay, so I see one more question popped up. Oh, okay. So is front-end development equivalent to web designer or web developer? So it would be similar to web developer. I think web developer is a somewhat like larger, less specific term than front-end developer or back-end developer or full stack developer. I think web developer, it would really, include any kind of development that, applies to the web. And of course, like, back-end developers do have a whole role to play in web development. So I think that's just one where it can really, you really do have to just do a little bit more digging of like, what is that role asking for? Okay, so before we wrap up, I just want to tell you that if you still aren't sure which one to do, I want you to know that that's totally fine. Because at least at Skillcrush, you don't have to decide right away. So as a reminder, when you enroll in the Break Into Tech program, you do get access to both of our career tracks, so the front-end developer track and the UI UX designer track. And, of course, we do suggest that you pick one eventually and stick to it, because we do want you to actually completely get qualified for a role and then get the opportunity to apply for those roles. You will have the option, and we will absolutely work with you to help you figure out. You can, first of all, test both out by taking the first class in each one in the career tracks. And then, we, of course, can work with you to figure out what's the right choice for you. And as a reminder, the way that the program works is we begin by helping you choose your career path. We then work with you to learn skills you need to get qualified for the job. And then we help you land your first job in tech. And we are, so confident about our ability to help you land that job in tech that we actually guarantee it, which means that if you sort of follow our program and, do everything that we advise you to do, and you don't receive a qualified job offer within 6 months of graduating or within 6 months of job searching, we will give you your tuition refunded in full. Sorry, I am coughing. So when you enroll in the Break Into Tech program, you also get an enormous amount of career support, career track support, meaning when you're doing your career tracks, you're going to get access to a private and global student community. And then you have access to the wonderful instructors. So they help you with lesson challenges. You can email them. They do small group video Q&As and one-on-one mentoring. The Get Hired program this shows 4 classes, but it's actually 5 classes, all about how to prep your resume and LinkedIn, how to find jobs, how to use our very special and slightly different and unorthodox way of applying for jobs to maximize your chances of getting an interview, how to ace that interview once you get the interview. The actual 4th class is called How to Ace the Technical Test. It's all about different types of technical tests, including one of the most beautiful things about our students is that our students get all these technical tests and then we add them to the database. So it includes a database of actual technical tests that our students have gotten for you to practice. And then the last class is how to vet a job offer, and how to negotiate and all that stuff to make sure that you get the best offer possible. And then, of course, the Get Hired program comes with its own huge amount of support. So we review your resume and LinkedIn. We do one-on-one career coaching and planning with you. You do weekly check-ins with in group where you work with your coach and fellow students. We do individual interview practice and then just continuous community and email support. And this leads to us having an over 95% success rate of students who complete the Get Hired program getting a job within 6 months of starting their job search, with an average starting salary of $70,000 and an average salary increase of $30,000. And like I said, this is all backed by our job guarantee, which is a tuition refund guarantee that says if you follow the program and do all the work and it doesn't work for you, we will give you your tuition back, because we take it really seriously and we worked really hard to design a program that we really believe will work. And you have to hold us accountable to that. I want to make sure that I ask these questions. Is support just for the career track or for the portion where you learn the skills as well? Sorry, I may have missed that. No, I apologize, Darian. I feel like I was a little bit confusing. So you get support for both the learn the skills portion and the get hired portion, which is where we help you get hired. And it's just a different group of people. So we have instructors who are, professionals in the tech industry who know the technology really well. They will support you as you learn your technical skills. And then we have career coaches who are incredibly experienced coaching people to get their first job in tech. And they know all about how to put your, how to do the interview, how to network, they're just such fonts of knowledge and insight, mindset stuff, all of that stuff. So they will support you in that part of the program. Yes. So Darian, absolutely, you will get assistance. And the other thing I should say is that the timeline for these two parts, so the Learn the Skills portion is a 6-month program, and then the Get Hired program is a 6-month program. So our goal is to get you a job within 12 months and split evenly between the two halves of the program. Okay, and I think that we are over time, but it's been such a pleasure talking to you all. Oh, and if you all will indulge me and go check out my new article that I just updated with 1 million little factoids about front-end development. And actually, sorry, I actually did pull up the one too for I do not want to in any way suggest that I don't love UI and UX design as much as I love front-end development, because I do. I love them both. It's like my 2 children. I do literally have 2 children too. So I want to make sure, but I just didn't happen to write this post. I wasn't just working on it, but it's a great post too about everything you need to know about UI and UX design. So anyways, I am so glad that you came and joined me for this webinar. As I hope that I have shared, imparted to you some little bit of my passion for this topic and for front-end development and UI UX design and the web and everything that is possible on it. And I just hope that that, no matter what age you are or what your prior experience is or your degree is, there is absolutely a place for you in tech. I really, really do believe that tech is for everyone. If you are excited and passionate about this field and excited about, the salaries and the flexibility and the creativity that you can enjoy working in this field, then I really, really want to encourage you to take the leap. Invest in yourself, sign up, if not with us, with another online or, whatever you have available to you. But of course, it would be our greatest honor to get the opportunity to work with you and have you be a part of our community. So I hope to see you in class. I hope to see you in another webinar. And otherwise, you have been a delightful, wonderful audience. And I just hope that you have a wonderful Thursday, Friday, and weekend. So thank you so much, everybody. Bye.